Greetings, I'm Thomas, and welcome back to the Basting Scheme. In this episode, we'll be going over the Flak Fest. Unlike most of what I'll be making on this project, Flak Fest is one thing where I have generated the design myself. So in this video, we'll be going over how I made the pattern, all of the blunders and triumphs of making the Flak Fest itself, and then at the end, we'll do some post-mortem analysis and lessons learned. So let's get into it. So I've got here my good buddy, Mr. Mannequin. This is currently sized to my torso. It's a little bit shorter than I am. That's mostly so that I can see over the shoulders. And then he's got a bunch of pins for a head. Those will come in handy in a moment. To start this patterning, I've got this large sheet of heavy duty packing paper, which I've got wrapping a roll of leather. So, just going to show you a little bit of my process for patterning. I think the front and back of this Flak Fest are going to be basically identical. And then the shoulders, there'll be a little bit more material in the back than there is in the front. And they will be angled such that it fits drapes across the body. Just got a pair of scissors, and I'm going to cut out the rough shape that I want here. Actually, before I do any cutting, this is already folded in half so that I get two pieces the exact same shape. So I'm going to cut it along the fold line here. I'm going to fold it in half so that I again get something symmetrical along the center of the chest here. Back to the task at hand. I'm going to grab a Sharpie. Alright, so I want to line my fold up with the center of the mannequin. The neck is going to be a fairly low neck. I don't need it to come all the way up because I've already got that with the flight suit that I made a couple episodes ago. Right here, where the curve meets the fold, when I cut that out, I want it to be as perpendicular to the fold as possible because that's going to give us the smoothest swoop. We're not going to have a little bump or dip in the middle of it. That's a bit better. It's going to be similar to a baseball t-shirt or baseball shirt. We're going to do something similar here with the shoulders of the Flak Fest. Probably right about here. I'm a little bit taller. My belly button's right about there. I want it to come down a little bit lower, probably right about there. I just got down on the floor for a second because it was easier to cut down there. With the excess material cut off, it lays flat across the shoulder here for what little it extends. And actually, I think that the angle is right, but it comes up too far across the shoulder. I want to bring it down from about there. we're gonna have, around the sides here, we're gonna have elastic banding. Just about 6 inches of it across the bottom of the ribs. And it's gonna do two things. One, it's going to hold the flak vest snug to my body. And two, because I'm not in the best shape of my life, it'll act as subtle shapewear. Tip for costuming, cosplay. Make your costume make you look good. See how that looks. Now, of course, I'm going to have to add in seam allowance. Much the same as with the pauldrons, where I went through the process of scanning the master into my computer and then copying it out with vector software to make the pattern, not only for myself, but for you guys. I'm going to do the same thing here. It's going to be a lot more challenging because how do you fit this in a print bed? I mean, I suppose I could use Adobe Scan, which uses your phone's camera and straightens things out, but I don't know. I'll figure something out. You will end up with the pattern and it will be in the description below. For now, we're not going to worry about seam allowance. In fact, for the purposes of this video, I might actually just add the seam allowance manually and then give you guys the updated version later when this video comes out. All right, I think that is a better shape. It's still not quite what I had in my head, but after a couple years of patterning to the human body, you will find out that nothing is quite like it works out in your head. Before I let this go too long, one very important step that we need to take care of before we can do anything else is we need to wash the fabric. This is 100% cotton canvas, and 100% cotton is notorious for shrinking upon the first wash. The last thing I want to do is get this all put together, fits great, looks great, has nice quilting, and then I put it through the washing machine and suddenly it is all crumpled and crinkled and doesn't fit. So I'm going to put this through the wash. I'm going to get the pattern ready. We'll see you in a minute. So if you watch the flight suit video, then you've already seen this part. This is just lots of laying out the pattern on the fabric, using some tailor's chalk because it's made for the job, cutting it out, sewing. You get the gist. Another tool that's perfect, made for the job, is a rotary cutter. I highly recommend you get one. Interesting thing for this pattern is I needed it to be poofy, not just 2 layers of canvas, so it has a layer of batting in the middle. This batting would get really poofy at the seams if I sewed it normal. So I sewed it flat with butt joints But in order to do that, I needed to use a spiral whip stitch and baste everything together. This is just pinning and then sewing, and most of it is stuff that I've already shown you. So sit back and enjoy, I guess. One thing I should probably note is if you're using pins and not fabric clamps or something like that, be careful. I poked myself. I drew blood. It hurt. But it's okay. I think I'll probably survive. So this pattern consists of 3 layers. There's an inner piece of canvas, an outer piece of canvas, and batting sandwiched in between. These are all layered together, sewn flat, so they're the same shape, but they need to be held together. That's why I sewed around the edges. Here I'm just laying out where I'm going to quilt. I want some nice parallel quilting lines. With the color, I kind of regret it. Reminds me of Dragon Ball. I'll be fine though. Transferring the lines over to the shoulders, continuing them. But then it's just lots of sewing. Straight lines. Again. And again. It's kind of zen, but it takes some patience. With all of that sewn together, I needed to trim the edges. Why? Because I wanted to use some edge binding tape. Edge binding tape gets folded over the edge. That tool I just showed you is an edge binding guide. It guides the tape and folds it over the fabric that you're sewing for you, which saves a lot of effort. It is expensive. It's like $15 if you consider that expensive. I do for the job that the tool actually did. You can find tutorials online, a lot of them on Instagram. People have made that tool out of like cardstock, real cheap. Okay, so there's been a bit of a change of plans. I am still going to use elastic to hold the sides together because it's kind of floppy. That's not going to protect anyone from anything. So we're going to still use elastic to hold it together, just like in the concept picture. However, I was talking to my friend Ed, and he reminded me that much like snaps and zippers, elastic is considered a modern material and therefore doesn't quite fit the aesthetic of Star Wars. So we need to cover this up. So I'm going to add in some sleeves to go over the elastic, and those are going to have some Velcro so they're adjustable, and it's just going to cover the elastic so it'll still cinch in, but it won't look as bad. So instead of black here, again, like the concept picture, it's going to be more khaki color. So let's get into it. Patterning again. So my favorite patterning medium is brown paper. Having a square helps keep things square, obviously. I've also got this little tailor's ruler. It has a little blue thing that slides up and down. You can set it to a certain width. It's great for setting seam allowance. But then I also have this yellow protractor. Someone gave this to me in college. Basically, you just set the angle and forget it. You trace, and it's perfect when I need it. and it doesn't get used when I don't need it, which is the vast majority of the time. So here I'm just testing out the fit around the elastic, making sure it fits. Fun fact, when I drew the pattern, I only drew one piece for these side sleeves, so I added the seam allowance for both to the same piece. If you choose to purchase the pattern for yourself, these will be separate. Pinning is pinning is pinning. You've seen this a dozen times by now. It is what it is. I'm going to sew around the perimeter of this piece, but you will notice that I leave a hole at the bottom edge. This is so that after I take all the pins out, I can pull the entire piece back through that hole to turn it what is actually right side out. Fun fact, that's actually how a lot of pillows and stuffed animals are made. The corners are a little bit tough, so I went in with a chopstick to poke those out. Now it does look a little bit like a pillow or a stuffed animal, so I'm going to go around the edges with a top stitch just to make it look prettier. Decided to go for Velcro on the closures of these side panels. Velcro is another one of those materials that, like elastic, is considered modern and therefore not acceptable in Star Wars. And there's a lot of nerds that'll get onto my case if I make the Velcro visible, so obviously I'm not going to make the Velcro visible. If you don't care about such pedantic rules, by all means, don't bother. Make it how you want to make it. It's your thing. Don't worry about what other people are going to think. I did a dumb. So, obviously, the reason I made this in the first place is to cover up 3 strips of 3-inch elastic. That's 9 inches. And this is supposed to wrap around those, just to cover them. Problem is, I included seam allowance for making the flat piece. What I did not include seam allowance for is sewing it into a loop. So the circumference here is 1 inch short. These will not fit. What I will have to do is I will have to layer these up, something like that, sew them together with a zigzag stitch so that they can still stretch, and then I should be able to put them together. The way that this works is this will be the back, this will be the front, or something like that. Then the Velcro will hold everything together. So I'm going to sew the elastic together just so it all stays in place. You need to pin it first. And when you're sewing elastic, the last thing you want is to lose that stretch. That's the whole reason you're using elastic. So you can't use a straight seam, otherwise it won't stretch. A zigzag seam will allow it to still stretch. Bouncy, see? So now I need to sew the sides to the flak vest. This is going to be difficult. With the elastic in there, some of these seams are more than 1/2 inch thick. More than 1.5 centimeters. Pins wouldn't cut it. I tried using masking tape here, and it seemed to work great, but I'll talk more about it in the conclusion. For attaching at least the upper body armor to the flak vest is laces. this is very much in line with the medieval practice of arming or armoring. What they did was they had laces usually made out of leather and usually with much pointier tips than these, and they would lace the armor, metal plate armor, to what was called an arming doublet. So this is very, very much in a similar vein. A lot of people do magnets and more commonly even Velcro and such for their Mandalorian armor. I like to think that they would have something a little more secure. And this just grounds it in reality. Maybe they have more high-tech mounting systems, but I don't care. This works for me. Okay, I've made the pauldrons. Last episode, I made the flak vest. Boy, that's been a journey. I made the laces. Yet lack I one thing. Grommets. So these are just little pieces of brass. These are nickel coated, but they're brass. They go together like this, and then this tube gets flared out using this setter and this anvil. Basically, put that down there on the anvil, put the fabric, or these are designed for leather, but fabric is fine, and then setter, and then whack it with a hammer. But before I can do that, I need to punch holes. I have here a drive punch and my pauldron. It's getting all covered in dust and probably needs to be remade at some point, but that's beside the point. So now I need to find my lacing locations. Okay, so here we are. We've made the flak vest. As you can see, it's on my friend Mr. Mannequin. I would have put it on myself, except one, it's a bit of a struggle. You really don't want to see that on camera. And we all know what happened last time I did the whole snapping thing. So one thing that I want to start doing in these videos is a bit of lessons learned. What are some things I think I could have done better? What would I do differently next time? So first of all, let's start with some positives. I mean, it doesn't fit too well on the mannequin right here, but it fits me pretty well. Positives: from a distance, from the camera perspective, 3 feet away or more, I think this looks fantastic. I am very pleased with the broad strokes of it. Up close, you should be seeing some B-roll footage of it now. There's a lot to be desired. The quilting is not very straight. I've still got some tape left on here, the edges. So that's one thing that I would do differently. I think that using masking tape to hold the sides on before sewing instead of pinning it worked very well, but it leaves tape behind, and that's not desired. The reason that I couldn't just use pins is because, let's see, this is between 3/16 and nearly 5/16 inches of material thickness here. My machine was struggling to sew through that. Pins were not going to hold it in place. So there's another lesson learned. If you're going to sew through this much heavy-duty material, try to have a heavy-duty machine on hand. The Janome HD1000 that I use is marketed as a heavy-duty machine for home use. It is not something like a Sailrite or a Juki, you know, a $500 to $3,000 machine that's going to go through anything. What else is there? There's really lots of rough seams. One thing that I can kind of go back and post and fix over time, but it'll take a lot of time and patience, is in some places on the outside of my edge binding tape, you can see the seam that I used to hold the 3 layers of the Flak vest together. Those I don't want to be visible. Like I said a second ago, I can go back and with a seam ripper manually just tear out all of that because it's not needed anymore. And I might do that, except that from a distance, again, it looks good. It's fine. You won't notice it unless I'm pointing it out to you, like right now. The thing to do there, if I was to tack this together the same way, is instead of a 1/4 inch from the edge, I would go maybe 1/8 of an inch from the edge. That leads us on to the edge binding itself. There are some pretty severe corners that I had to sew around. At the bottom of the front and back, that's fine. The machine handled that like a champ. In the corners of where it comes down over the shoulders, I tried to pull that corner straight as much as possible. Didn't quite hack it, so it's pulling loose in some places. Again, I'm not super pleased with my technical proficiency there, or lack thereof. And then the outside corners of the shoulders, these are passable right now, but they could use some work. Another thing, lesson learned, snaps are great, but they come undone real easy. I'm not sure what to do about this. I could go back and post and add more snap tape. Might do that. I'm not sure, but it comes apart really easy. The next big thing to discuss here, hold that open, is our Velcro covered elastic. This is a change that would be very easy to implement. I use too little elastic here. I thought I wanted to be a little tight around me because I like the feeling of compression clothing, plus it might help aesthetics. I used probably about 1 inch too little of elastic here. And what that means is it is a struggle to put it on over my head. And of course I can't pull it up from beneath either. I can get it on. And it's comfortable, very comfortable when it is on, but it is hard. And I'm glad I'm not more claustrophobic than I am, because there are some people who would have a full-blown panic attack if they had to put on this Flak vest. That's not a good. What I might do instead is just have the Velcro sleeves. They don't need to go inside of each other full, but might as well. You don't need the elastic. I like the elastic. It feels comfortable, but you don't need it. So I guess I would remove that from the pattern. And I'll probably leave it in as an option for the pattern that you guys can pick up on Etsy. Pauldrons. As discussed multiple times, these need to be refinished because they're getting all scuffed and banged up, having soft material impressions on them, which is not very good weathering. It just kind of looks ugly. That's beside the point. Laces. These I'm happy. I am happy with where these ended up. They are super simple to undo. Comes apart real easy. Very secure. Might work itself loose over like a couple days of wearing it, but I'm not going to wear this more than one day at a time. Probably not more than one day in a year. And the other thing is, because the Mandalorian flight suit has a short sleeve on top of a long sleeve, and that short sleeve is still loose, what I can do is I can go in and place more grommets on that outer sleeve so that I have a tie down point and these pauldrons will move even more closely with my arms. I think that is a big, it's not the quickest to install. Some people like to use magnets, others like to use Velcro, some people even like to use snaps. But this feels authentic and I want a certain feeling when I'm wearing this. So again, I'm happy enough with it, happy enough with the shape of it that I'm gonna put together a pattern for you guys to purchase if you want. But my technical proficiency on sewing still needs to improve. That's just where we're at. So if you like this video, and if you like the project, then I encourage you to give it a like. Maybe subscribe down below if you want to see where this project goes in the future. And leave a comment. Tell me if there's something that I missed on the lessons learned, something that you noticed in the video that I didn't talk about. And yeah, just let me know how your day's going. Why not? At any rate, thank you for watching. Good luck. Don't die. We're all counting.